Welcome, everyone. I am so privileged to get to be here with you today. Our host, Karen Barbito, is actually moving and ran into some technical difficulties. And so she has asked me to take over, and I am really thrilled because we have an amazing guest for you today. But before I introduce her and we go into our conversation, I want you to do two things. One, share this video so that more people can get to experience the conversation we're about to have. And two, I want you to take a peek at the Play Viable trailer. We are hosting another free showing on December 5th from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. At the end of the play, we're going to have a live Q&A with the host or the playwright and the actors. And so we want to make sure that you have enough time to host a watch party. Many of you asked to share it with your groups that you're doing. And so we're coming back with it and we're really excited. So join me in watching the trailer now.
Did being pregnant hurt you?
Of course not. I just told you Becky was a healthy, happy baby.
And you? Were you a healthy, happy mom?
How old are you?
I would be 30.
Would be? That sounds a bit Downton Abbey, don't you think? Things you're asking about are things that nobody should know but me. I'm going crazy!
You're not crazy, Judy.
Then you're crazy. One of us is crazy. Were you scared 30 years ago tonight?
Oh.
You are the meanest person I have ever met.
Why do you say that?
Because you are, for whatever reason, pretending to be my first daughter. You didn't have to say a word to win our little argument.
But you did.
They promised me this would never happen. They promised me.
God wants you to know that you're free. Hush. Hey, I love you. I am here to tell you that Jesus loves you and that you are forgiven. Jesus wants you to experience his complete love and indescribable joy. God is loving, just, and merciful. Remain in him, and he will remain in you forever.
Hello, everyone. I am thrilled to be with you today. My name is Lisa Rowe, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the CEO for Support After Abortion. You may notice that I'm not Karen Barbito, your host that has been with you all these weeks. We are on our Facebook Live number 30 broadcast. We are so thrilled. And it just seems like more and more things continue to happen. And the abortion healing movement continues to be just elevated and equipped and empowered. And so today I have an amazing guest with you. She, in many ways, is the matriarch of the abortion healing movement. Her name is Pat Layton, and she is the president and founder of Surrendering the Secret. Would you help me welcome her to our show?
I'm so glad to be here.
Hey, Pat, I am so excited. As I said earlier to the viewers, I just was told that Karen couldn't get through her technology issues. And so here we are. We weren't expecting to be on, but we've actually been trying to touch base since our last conference in the summer. And so I couldn't think of a better interview for me to get to moderate, because you and I really don't know each other, and our viewers may or may not know you. So I get to ask some questions that maybe are already on their heart. And so I just think let's just jump right in. Is that okay with you?
That's good with me. I was just thinking while I was waiting that I need to interview you with our team, our Surrendering the Secret team. So
I would love that.
I need to get to know you as much as the other way.
Absolutely. I would love that. Absolutely. So we are here at this beautiful opportunity. We've had COVID hit. We've had so many different pivots in the abortion healing industry. And your ministry actually goes back way before any of this happened. In a lot of ways, you've cultivated some really great things. But I'm just interested if you could share with me and our guests just a little bit about yourself and how your ministry got started. I think that would be a really great place to start.
Okay, yes. Well, I've been in this ministry full time for about 32 years. So yeah, when you say way back, it's like way back. So I was telling somebody the other day, I used to be the youngest person in every group I was in, and now I'm the oldest person. What happened? So I actually started in this ministry through the healing of my past abortion. My husband and I had an abortion in college together and went through 7 years of basically relationship destruction, self-destruction, until very long story short, got connected with a Christian counselor who led us through what is now Surrendering the Secret today, all these years later. She led us through a healing process for post-traumatic stress disorder, because at that time she had never ministered to anyone who had had a past abortion. So we went through that journey with her. God healed our marriage, which was a miracle. And we began to hear about this new thing called crisis pregnancy centers. And we started looking for someone in Tampa who needed to open one of those things. I had a very lucrative insurance business that I had gone to college for, and in fact had had my abortion for, because my determination was to have my own business. Anyway, long story short, God made it clear that we were the ones that were supposed to open the pregnancy center. So we, together with a group of friends, opened the first crisis pregnancy center in Tampa, Florida, and it's still there today, called A Woman's Place. And we grew over those next years to become one of the largest pregnancy resource centers in the nation. Tampa's a large metropolitan area, so that was not hard to do because there were lots of abortions going on in our community. And so anyway, when we opened the pregnancy center, we started right away using that material that Christian counselor had walked us through. So we just put it together in a format. At that point, I didn't know Linda Cochran. I met her shortly after that. So Linda and I have kind of walked this journey together. At the time that we opened our center, I wasn't aware of any other abortion recovery curriculum. So we put this material together. We used it for many, many years in our pregnancy center. Other curriculums began to develop then over the years, but we continued using ours for the next 20 plus years, training some centers that asked for help, or, it was always my passion was abortion recovery because of my own story. So it was always a major focus in our center. But 5 years ago, Lifeway came to me and 10 years ago. 10 years ago, hard to believe, 2009. Lifeway came to me and asked me to publish Surrendering the Secret. So we had been using that curriculum all those years, and then Lifeway published it, and the rest is history. It took off, and it's just been a whirlwind ever since.
Wow. So I have to ask a clarifying question. A Woman's Place, is that the pregnancy center a part of New Life Solutions?
Yes, it is now. My husband and I founded that center it's our daughter. I always measure everything by our daughter because our miracle daughter was born right when we were opening the pregnancy center. So that center is 32 years old, and we merged with New Life Solutions about 6 years ago. 5 or 6 years ago.
Wow. So when I was in our pregnancy center locally here in Southwest Florida, we use New Life Solutions and A Woman's Place as a model of like our standard of care. That is amazing, Pat. Oh my goodness.
Yep, that was nice. We opened while we were leading there, we opened an adoption agency, abstinence education, our medical unit, and then Surrendering the Secret was a major part of our center. So yeah, that's my baby. A Woman's Place is my baby.
Yeah, and I bet you and Saul go way back then, the previous
We did,
CEO.
yes. Well, actually, Raul Reyes was the executive director when I started my center in Tampa. So Raul and Chris Reyes coached and mentored me to open Tampa's center. And then when Chris and Raul left, Saul came in.
Wow.
So
We are never more than two people removed. You know, Chris McCluskey at our last virtual conference, he was really close with Saul. Him and Saul did a clinical program together, a clinical office together. And he was a
that's
great
right.
interview. He was a great interview. Yes.
Yes.
And he's done some great things. So, wow, what a small
Yeah.
world. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I've been doing this a long time. And then, like I said, when Lifeway came along, pretty much it became pretty obvious that God was leading me into a lot of abortion recovery focus.
Yeah.
So we began to pray about, how we were going to let the center go on and grow on. And
Right.
that's when we decided to merge with New Life Solutions. And I kind of was spun out on my own with Surrendering the Secret. So,
Wow.
yeah. It's been
That's
a
really
journey.
similar to House Support After Abortion. You know, we were housed
Mhm.
inside of a
Right.
pregnancy center and it
Yes.
grew and grew.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think
Yes,
there's
that's
something to be
right.
said about that, Pat, because I feel like when I just read our local pregnancy center's newsletter, they're serving about 60 new clients every month, and we're serving about 200. How many new clients or how many groups are you guys in Surrendering the Secret doing every month?
Goodness. When Surrendering the Secret was first published in 2009 with Lifeway, we started keeping statistics and we
Mhm.
started building a map of our leaders. But it got to the point where I have trained, and our team has trained close to 4,000 leaders across the world now. So
Wow.
we really, last year, Lifeway republished Surrendering the Secret. So we have a new format and a new book. When they republished it, it kind of gave a new burst of energy to our team. And so we have spent the last year regrouping and kind of finding where our leaders are, and
Wow.
who they are and who's out there. So we're kind of just being reborn in some ways in terms of our numbers. So, I have no idea. Like I said, I personally trained over 3,000 leaders.
Wow. Well, and you can answer this question for the viewers, but something I've learned as a result is that the abortion healing movement 30 years ago is not what it is today. So it was necessary for you to have this pivot or this rebranding. Can you kind of talk about that? What happened 30 years ago, and like how has everything kind of shifted along and grown?
Honestly, in terms of the healing process, I feel like the tools that God gave us all those years ago are still just like the Bible never changes and it still keeps healing. I feel like He gave us the healing processes many years ago, and those are powerful and still effective. I think the
Mhm.
main change that's happened is obviously there are tons more resources available. Like I said, when I wrote Surrendering the Secret, I didn't even know that I couldn't find any other resources. So I think the main thing that's changed is the availability of abortion recovery opportunities.
Wow.
So I think as far as the healing journey, you can't fix what's not broken. It's a beautiful healing process that God's given us, a biblical healing process. But we have grown exponentially in terms of warriors and teams.
Wow.
So that's, to me, is the main difference.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Teresa Burke enlightened us too, and saying that it was so hard when she first started talking about abortion and talking about abortion healing. Like she says, I'm exhausted how much we had to fight. And she's like, and now it just seems like people are ready for healing. And maybe they always were ready for healing, but maybe society or culture. And I still feel like we fight that. But that's the one thing she had mentioned was kind of different for her from when she started to where she is now. Can you relate to that?
I think that like in my own church in Tampa, for example, we have a freedom ministry. Now I've just moved to Atlanta, and COVID hit, so we haven't settled in a new home church. But our church in Tampa, we were founders there, and we were there for 30 years. So that church progressively embraced the freedom message for believers. It's beautifully done, so that there are things like pornography and immorality and different kinds of abuse topics and freedom topics are very open in that church. So we had gotten to the point where we were having 5 and 6 healing groups a year just within our own church. So I think that the message of freedom and the understanding of freedom amongst Christians has become so much more powerful that people are in the church are more open to stepping into a healing journey, which to me is a really critical change, because we want the church to be healed and set free, so that their voices are set free, and they are volunteers and they're donors and they're supporting the pro-life movement from a healthy perspective. So I think the fact that Lifeway, we use Surrendering the Secret within the doors of our own pregnancy center for so many years. And then when Lifeway published Surrendering the Secret, Lifeway gave us some instant credibility in the church. You know, Lifeway is the largest publisher of Christian curriculum in the world. And so they gave us an open door to the church that said that it's okay to talk about this topic. So that was definitely a new journey, is to have the doors to the church opened, to realize this is something we need to put into our care ministries, in our healing ministries. We need the people in our church to be healed and set free, so that they can join this fight.
Wow. Yeah, the word that comes to mind is leverage. I'm sensing that here you are, this college educated woman, huge business background, right? You come into it because of your passion. So here you are, you have training, you have an understanding of the business principles, and then you have a passion to intersect with it. You birth this pregnancy center, you birth this healing curriculum. No wonder it's like, yeah, Lifeway would seem like the next best thing, but it's all been leveraged for the greater good.
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, the fact that Lifeway published Surrendering the Secret was nothing short of a miracle. They could have chosen so many writers with lots of letters behind their name, and but God just opened the door. It was supernatural. The story's incredible of how we even got there. So it was a supernatural experience, and it has been since they published.
That's amazing. And I love that they would then stand too, because, I find that some Christians are afraid to even say the word abortion, let alone write a book about it or bring material in it. We were just in a training, again, our local pregnancy center, they're coming up a lot, but a lot of the team and the volunteers are just afraid or uncomfortable, maybe not afraid as much, but they're, when they're in their intake in the room with the client and they're doing their intake, and here they are about to ask that question, have you had an abortion? They get nervous, and then the clients get nervous. And the executive director was just sharing with me how that is a major issue, and how they're seeing clients kind of move, maybe not even telling the whole story because they can sense that the volunteer or the staff member is uncomfortable. So kudos to Lifeway for that.
I think the fact that I have a 25-year background as a founder and executive director of a pregnancy resource center has given me so much compassion and discernment and ability, and hopefully the ability to understand and serve executive directors to help them merge this ministry in, because I know the drill. I know how many walk in the front door and what their needs are, and how many things there are to think about in a 15-minute counseling session, where someone's choosing life. So I really completely get it, how difficult it is to incorporate this ministry into what their many demands.
Right. Do you have a training, Pat, for executive directors? Do you offer that? Oh, tell us about it. That's amazing.
Well, training is my favorite thing to do. That's why I have this beautiful little shed quarters I have here. And in fact, the last training we did, Lisa, last week, we've been training on by Zoom all year. And we have been amazed and thrilled at how I think we've trained close to 500 now just this year.
Wow.
I mean, think about that. That is a lot of trained leaders.
Yes,
And
it
our
is.
last Zoom kind of happened spontaneously, where we had a group call us from Canada. So we had 35, I think, from Canada on a training, and then we added 20 more. So we did a Zoom training for 50 some odd just last week.
Amazing.
It
Wow.
is. It is. God is. So I think that as far as support after abortion, the thing that we're seeing is just this exponential growth in leaders and wanting to learn. So most of my trainings have about half and half executive directors and or client services directors or care ministries from churches. But I think, just the fact that they're trying to learn how to incorporate this into their ministry. Executive directors know that most of their volunteers have had past abortions, and so they want to add this to what they're doing, but it is such a tricky balance to keep focus.
Yeah, and so necessary. I always like to share this, but we did a post for our first virtual conference, Pat, and it was for women between the ages of like 20 and 29, really trying to stick to that demographic, connecting with leaders, hoping that they would see the conference as valuable, saying 1 in 4 of these women will have an abortion by 45. We all know the statistic. Help us, by learning how to be a better support for them. And Pat, we had to end up taking the post down because there was so much hate, pro-life hate. Why are you going to support murderers? Why are you going, murderers go to jail. Those are 4 hags. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So I just see what you're saying so valuable that it should be half the executive directors in there, because in order to end the demand for abortion, we have got to heal this nearly 50 years. Can you say more about why the pregnancy center movement and the pro-life movement needs to get off of this hate and get on board with healing?
I can tell you that when I first went through my healing journey, I had, like I said, I was running an insurance agency. That was my big dream, was to have my own business and the sports car and all that stuff. And I went through the healing process, and I had no intention. My only experience with the issue of abortion was totally pro-choice. I mean, I had my abortion fully pro-choice. I signed petitions. I wrote papers. I helped open Tampa's first abortion clinic that I later sat with the executive director of that abortion clinic and told her my journey. So it's the process that we've gone through over these years to transition. When I remember going to my first pro-life event, and the woman behind the microphone was spewing about her abortion. I mean, forgive my graphic, but snot coming out of her nose, tears, yelling, angry about abortion and how it had hurt her. And so I was staying away from that thing with everything within me, because everything I saw was anger and ugly from the pro-life community. So when God dragged us into this, that was one of my passions, is that I wanted to silently, from the background, help women be healed and restored so that they could share their story from a thank you, Jesus perspective, from compassion, from reaching out to others who had had that heartbreak, and get rid of all that anger and mess. And so it has kind of taken me down a path over these years. And you'll understand when I say this, is kind of being anti-political, if you know what I mean. I've just always kind of shied away from policy discussions, even though I know that that is very critical, and God has called and anointed leaders and voices for that purpose. But for my purpose, I have felt only called to healing the heartbreak of abortion. So that's why my foundation was just so strong in just that I want women healed, and couples and men healed and set free, so that their voice is positive and loving. The whole pro-love term, I mean, I was like all over that. I was wishing I had thought of it myself. So I'm all about that. I think that is what we need to be, is pro-love, pro-life. So
Yeah, and for board members or for different people, just hearing your message just now, Pat, it is that being set free sets others free. Because how many times have you heard the grandmother that encouraged the mother that encouraged the daughter to have an abortion? And so it really is pro-life to help set free and heal people, right?
I wish I had
Mhm.
story time to tell you some. I have had the most amazing stories that God's put in front of me with mother, daughter, grandmother, where I've worked through healing with an entire family.
Wow.
So, because when the grandmothers had what she called a back alley abortion and then pushed her daughter, and then the grandmother never told the daughter, it's a generational heartbreak, and it's a generational healing. It's a
Right.
generational freedom to tell the
Yeah.
truth about the heartbreak of
Yeah.
abortion. I've discussed it with all of my younger grandchildren and my grandchildren, and it's our opportunity to tell them the truth about why we feel what we feel about the sanctity of life.
That's so good. And you can do it from your own testimony. So bring us back to here you are with the executive director of the local abortion clinic. Like, what do you tell her? How, what did that conversation look like?
Well, I mean, I remember I was very naive. I had just started our pregnancy center. And when I took my first steps into the pro-life world and started to learn, first of all, I learned what God says about the sanctity of life. And I had never read scripture. I had no idea that God created a baby in his mother's womb. I never thought about that way. And so my first introduction to the pro-life message was biblically based. And then I began to learn more about the policies and the truth about abortion and the agenda of the pro-abortion community. So when we opened our pregnancy center, I went back to the abortion clinic that I had gone to for my abortion. And I asked the executive director to have lunch with me. And I just said, I used to think this, and now I think this, and this is why. And I'd like to serve you and help those women who come to your abortion clinic who, want to have help or don't want to have an abortion or need help after an abortion. And she pretty much spit her food out, and started her argument with me about, how anti-pro-life she was. And I was very naive about that. I assumed that anyone who knew the truth would want to help women, would want to offer them an option. So she started telling me how in their clinic, how they put the baby pieces together after an abortion. So it was a very early awakening in my journey of the division. It's a lot like the election we've just been through. We talk about how it depends on what news channel you watch to kind of get your perspective. And then it is dang hard, right, to change somebody to another perspective.
Right.
Big, once we get settled in our thought process and become convinced. So that's how I always kind of discovered it when I had tried to reach out on multiple occasions to abortion clinics and to just to talk about, here's an option for women. If you're pro-choice, here's an option. And I began to learn so early on how difficult it is to cross that bridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why I think it's so important for us to reach. The younger and younger we reach, the more strength we have. So that's, it's so important, this whole generational message that you and I are talking about, that we minister to the grandmother, we minister to the mom. And then in the last step in Surrendering the Secret, it's an 8-step journey. It's a video-driven study. And in the last section, this last step 8 is sharing your story. So part of my passion in terms of helping women and couples get healed is just like with, the couple I put on your show, Debbie and Tim. My goal is when someone goes through the healing journey with Surrendering the Secret, that they are then equipped to share their story or just jump into the movement somehow, wherever God would place them. I just think that's such an important part. It doesn't do any good for people to get healed and then just go back and not tell their kids or grandkids.
Yeah, that's so good, Pat.
That
Debbie had
counselor,
said, okay, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say this one phrase because I think your listeners will relate. Is
Yes.
The counselor I went to originally, she said, you can't give out what you do not have.
Wow.
You can't give out what you don't have. So if you're not
So true.
healed, you're not going to project healing and freedom.
Right. Wow.
But you were going to say
So
something.
good.
I give
Yeah.
on a
Well, I'm just really enjoying this conversation. Santi just reminded me we're at 30 minutes. I'm like, holy cow, where did the time go? I have just a few pieces. I mean, I guess we're going to have to continue this conversation. But one of the things that you just said was that Debbie and Tim were on the show, and they were a married couple who experienced abortion together, one of the rare couples that have stayed together through an abortion experience. I think there's statistics out there that show the majority of those relationships end in divorce or separation. You are also a rarity too. And one of the things in sharing your story, she had said that it was her that she went through the healing first, and Tim actually needed permission. He didn't realize it. And I don't know if our conversation alluded to it a little bit more, and I'm anxious to follow up with them. But he had said, if she never wanted to talk about it, I wouldn't have ever said anything. It was her, this was her story, and I wasn't going to share it with anybody. What you just shared is so important, because even what you're saying about your grandkids, like, you are breaking generational curses and anything that might have been passed down through that. So do you have a training for that? And what would be something that you would encourage our listeners to do as a result of hearing, like, oh, I didn't tell this person, or I did tell this person?
I do. I'm so passionate about this.
Yes.
Because I think the reason that I am is because the first few years of Surrendering the Secret, when we were doing all the fresh new training with the Lifeway doors open, I would run into people and I'd find that they still hadn't told their kids, or, so what good is that? And it began to really discourage me. So I have become very passionate about that, what I call it chapter 8 women, or chapter 8 couples. So I have on my personal website at patlayton.net, I have a training called Sharing Your Story for Speaking and Writing. And in fact, at conferences, one of the workshops I try to submit is how to share your personal testimony for speaking and writing, because it isn't easy. We want to be sure that the timing's right, and that the situation is right. Sometimes for children and grandchildren, I'll never forget what my youngest granddaughter picking one of my books up. It was The Surrendered Life, out of the back seat of my car. And she saw my name on it, and she said, "Gee, did you write that book?" And I said, "Yes, Bella, I wrote that book." And she said, "Would you read it to me?" And I said, "Bella, when you're old enough, I'll read that book to you." And then just a few weeks ago, I ended up having a discussion with that granddaughter about my own past abortion. And really, Lisa, that doesn't ever get any easier to say to your children or grandchildren how, this failure. But it matters to me for her to know the truth about abortion, and not to just buy what she hears on TikTok or in the school classroom. I want her to know the heartbreak of abortion and the other side of a woman's choice.
Yeah. And something that I'm identifying in what you're sharing is that you're equipped to tell her. You've gone through healing. Clearly you're a leader and you have tons of experience. I think that what I heard from Teresa Bonaparte's and some other people in our conference is that a lot of times people just kind of vomit out of their own need to tell their abortion healing story. And so how important your training is for people, because we've got to make sure, from everything I've learned, that our motivation is pure when we're telling people, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That was the thing when I first started hearing testimonies and I would hear them delivered like they were. I thought, we've got to change that. We need healed women and couples like Tim and Deb to share, this is what happened in our marriage and why we made this choice. And this is what turned us around, turned our thinking around. And they have shared with their children and will share with their grandchildren. So that is breaking a generational curse, like you said, in one family at a time.
Yes. Yeah, but it has to be pure, because if you're doing it, any of our viewers out there, it's like, oh, she just told us to tell people. No, 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 no. The purpose is to tell it when the person who's asking for it or is able to receive it, and that you're in a good place, that if there are questions, because I've heard, I have a divorce situation in my own journey and my children, and when do you share certain things? And I remember my kids had learned something before I was ready to share it. And thank God for healing, because I can remember that car ride, Pat, like it was yesterday, where my daughter was angry with me,
Yes.
absolutely angry with me.
Yes.
And to be able to tell her that I'm imperfect and I'm not the mom she sees today. I wasn't the mom then that she sees today. And thank God for God and his
Mhm.
redemption. But if I hadn't had that,
Yeah, the
that would have been a
power
hard
of that.
conversation. Yes.
Right. The power that
Hmm.
you're able to share from that healed place and
Yes.
offer hope, and as opposed to those many who have abortions and then they keep selling abortion, just to try to keep themselves protected. Because if
Yes.
you come to that place where you have to admit, I made a mistake, this was
Right.
wrong, then that's a whole journey to go down, right?
That's so
So I'm
true.
excited about what you guys are doing and how many ministries you're platforming and sharing. And, we all just have to stay our course,
Hmm.
and stay the path that God's called us to, giving it our excellence. And then all together, it makes a difference.
Oh, that's so good, Pat. Yeah, because Karen just told me we've referred like 10 people to you recently, and it doesn't come like that all the time. Like that was a huge wave because they're ready for your work, but there's some people that aren't ready for the faith-based journey, or they need
Right.
a more gentle approach initially. Not that yours isn't gentle, but you have to be ready for healing when they come to you, right? I mean, you'll take them step by step, but you have to be ready to push yourself into healing. And not everybody's there. And so it's nice to see how we do have all these programs coming together to provide just that thing that that person needs in just that moment.
Yeah.
So it's awesome.
I that's a whole discussion for us that we'll have to have sometime. Maybe we could have a
Sure.
chat with some, because my perspective on that is that I had as I was sold on the pro-choice movement. And
Hmm.
when I went to a counselor when I was looking for help in my 7 years of destruction, and I went to a counselor that I did not know she was a Christian. So, and I poured my story out to her, and she listened really quietly. And at the end of it, she says, Pat, can I pray for you? Lisa, I was so ticked off. I was so angry. I thought, what the heck? I don't need you to pray for me. And so, but I just wanted to get out of there. So she prayed for me and prayed about my healing and all that. And I left her office, went for a few more months on my journey until God got a hold of me supernaturally through an event. And when I went through, met up with that biblical truth about healing, my life was instantly transformed. And the first thing I did was remember that prayer. So I personally am all about the biblical journey, and I know you guys are, but to me, there's only one path to healing. So, however we get them there, is that is the only way for permanent healing. The Bible says in Revelation 12:11, we overcome the enemy through the blood of Jesus and the word of our testimony. So the word of our testimony is the power that goes with the biblical truth to healing. So yes, I think that there are lots of different ways to reach people, but we have to be very careful about, how we walk that path,
I
so that
think
we
you and I
forget.
need to have a conversation. Yes, because this is so good. Let's unpack this. Could we do this again in a
I would
future
love
show?
to. I would love
Okay.
to, because listen, I feel like there's a little sliver going on
Hmm.
that if we're not careful, we're
Hmm.
going to fall away.
Right.
So yes, I would love to talk about it sometime. And
Yes.
I'll never forget the first time I was on TV with a Planned Parenthood executive. She chewed me up and spit me out. So I've tried to become a little better at like what my argument is than I was when I first started. But I'm pretty adamant about the biblical healing path and how it results in what we really are going after, which is a healed testimony.
Yes.
So,
We believe the same thing. Yes. Let's unpack that. Yes. So while I'm reviewing the questions, would you tell all of our viewers where they can learn more about your trainings, how they can get a hold of you, and then I'll read the questions so that they're ready. So I'll turn it back to you. And
okay, you can find us at surrenderingthesecret.com, where we have all of our resources. We have multiple resources. We have Surrendering the Secret, the Bible study that was published by Lifeway. We have a Surrendered Life, which is a chapter version of Surrendering the Secret. So it doesn't require a Bible at all. Everything is written out. My story, the healing journey, is written out in a Surrendered Life. And then we have a discussion guide for men called Surrendering the Heart of a Father. This was just published this year during COVID. So we had a little bit of a step back in terms of launching it. But next year we plan to do men's healing conferences, just like we have done women's in the past few years. So we're working right now. We have a 2021 dream. Our dream is to reach 1,000 churches in 2021 through our leadership team, providing them a free packet of each one of our supplies and just some ideas for how to start abortion recovery healing within the church. So we have right now a campaign going on called Share Your Light. And that's on the website as well for anyone who might want to help support getting Surrendering the Secret into more churches next year. We'd be so grateful for those that are kind of leaning that way.
That's wonderful. That's awesome. And you're a speaker, an amazing speaker, Pat. How can people, if they're moving back into the face-to-face platform, how can they book you as a speaker? I know that you've probably been, sectioned to this technical world for 2020, but how can they do that? And aren't you doing a Giving Tuesday? Are you doing something there too?
That's what I was just talking about. The Share Your Light campaign is on our website at surrenderingthesecret.com, and our goal is to fund 1,000 churches with our materials. So they can reach me at my website at patlayton.net. I'm pretty selective these days about what kind of outside, but we'll see what God does next year. But this platform has been amazing. We've been able to, so God has turned, he turns it all to good. We've reached thousands, and it's been an exciting, wonderful year in terms of ministry. So yeah, patlayton.net or surrenderingthesecret.com.
That's great. And you've answered most everything. How can you get started in a church? Well, now you know. You go to the website and maybe be the light and then share the light.
And we offer all different types of trainings during the year. Within my training for Surrendering the Secret leaders, I have an entire section on reaching the church and reaching, marketing your ministry, I call it. Awesome. So those are all things that you can find, through our website or emailing me. I can be emailed at patlayton@mac.com. So anybody who has a particular question or a need for me, if I can't answer it, I'll find the answer, patlayton@mac.com.
That's amazing. And somebody had spoken about men and you answered that in sharing. So that's great.
We're actually building a leader team now between board members and some of our ministry leaders to do some training next year.
Wow. Well, Pat, you always know it's a good conversation when 45 minutes flows by just like that. So
thank you for having me, Lisa. I love what you guys are doing. And I know that God is growing you exponentially yourself for support after abortion. You guys are very powerful team and it's exciting to watch.
That means a lot coming from you. It really does. And so if you've been watching and you are a leader or somebody who needs that extra training, I cannot think of a better place to refer you at this point. I mean, you heard everything that Pat had to share. And if you didn't get to watch the entire program, I would definitely recommend that you go back and listen to the recording. It's very clear that Pat has the personal experience, the professional experience to equip you and empower you into the next place, give you the wisdom and discernment that you need. So Pat, thank you for joining us today. I'm so thrilled. I really mean it. I want to have you back, and we'll have that faith and
discussion.
non-faith.
And
Yes.
I'd like to have you, we have a network of our leaders that we have a monthly lunch and learn. So it'll be my turn to ask you all the questions.
Wow. Well, I'm thrilled about that. This has been super awesome. Pat, again, I'm just grateful I got to sit at your feet today. I'm glad I got to be picked to be the facilitator, and I look forward to continued conversations. Thank you.
Blessings to you guys.
You too.